All right, hello and welcome everyone to our monthly Digital Codes webinar. My name is Phil Anthony. I am with ICC as a Digital Code Solution Specialist, and we do these monthly, sometimes just giving an overview of the product and features of Digital Codes Premium. And then sometimes we'll concentrate on a specific new release of a feature or go into depth on some details here. So that's what we're doing today with our Premium Answers and Quick Consult. Just make a couple notes here. While we are doing the webinar, please feel free to post questions in the chat. Go ahead and set it to chat to everyone so people can view the questions that have already been asked. During the presentation, our presenter may take a break and ask to see if there's any pertinent questions. If not, we will circle back around and catch them all at the end and have time for any verbal questions if you want to raise your hands. I do want to just make a couple quick point outs here. Here I am at the login page where you access all your digital codes. A lot of our features and improvements come from suggestions of our users. So up here in the corner, always feel free to use the Give Feedback button. Our product team does look at these all the time, and we do make enhancements, add news titles, and other items based upon your response. So please feel free to use that as frequently as you, have any questions that you want. And then I'll also point out here, as you do sign in, you come to your welcome page, and I just make note of this because we've made some other improvements here. But if you're looking here, actually, there's a topic we'll be discussing today. So you're going to be able to see, any new titles that have added. We also just added about 350 ASTM titles, but there's be announcements and everything here that you can check on. And then also we've added some new enhancements to our billing. So if you ever want to see where you are with your status with your codes and be able to add quantities of licenses or change billing preferences, you are able to do that. So I will now pause here. And as you can see, we got a few guests that are joining us. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And then I will turn it over here to Dan and Mike to introduce themselves, and I'll put the presentation button over to you, Dan. Go right ahead.
All right, so let me go ahead and share. I just want to confirm everybody is seeing my screen. Yep, beautiful. I love it when technology works. All right, well, good afternoon, everybody. Or to paraphrase one of my favorite quotes from The Truman Show, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night, depending on where everybody is joining us from in the world. My name is Dan Janicek. I am with ICC in the Product Development Division, working closely with digital codes and a lot of the digital services available therein. And joining us today, we're lucky enough to have Mike Giachetti, who is leading the technical services team, who are the magic really behind the quick consult service that we're going to be talking about. So Mike, thanks for joining us today. Great to have you.
Not a problem. Glad to be here.
So as we come into quick consult, I thought a good rationale to kind of set the stage with the thinking behind the service and how it's relevant is to look at legal advice. Broad array of topics that any individual could need support for at any given time. Things from being fortunate enough to win the lottery and needing to figure out how to handle the taxes on the grand income that you were beneficial for, to, God forbid, getting in an accident and needing to understand what your options are as far as support and monetary consultations, to starting your own business or even a large real estate transaction. The usage is very broad of where the legal sector exists, and that's why we have expertise. Sage legal is the smart or the prudent approach, and unless you are stubborn like my dad and assume you know everything already, reaching out to experts, getting their opinion, and using that to make an informed decision is a smart path to take. So don't be like my dad. Be willing to admit that advice and income from the experts is beneficial to allowing you to make an informed decision. And applying that, whether it's LegalZoom or a lot of other services out there, was the inspiration for Quick Consult, whereas the building codes and that sector is equally as broad and in many cases exponentially more complex. But it is critical in being able to ensure that we're applying the code requirements to the appropriate situation in the correct way. And so Quick Consult was brought for exactly that purpose. That consultation, that advice is what ICC is proud to offer to the space, recognizing that time is valuable and confidence in applying the requirements correctly is invaluable. So being able to have access to those expertise, those resources, be able to obtain that advice and apply it appropriately really becomes the underlying benefit of what we're going to be talking about here today. All right, the Quick Consult service is hosted and served through the Digital Codes platform. I'm going to pull in another browser tab here real briefly, just so I can show what the page would look like for somebody who's not signed in. Phil has already shown us there from the dashboard where the quick access link is available when you're signed in. For others, if not a direct link to bring you right to this page, you can always access Quick Consult from the main menu here, prominently right up near the top. All of the marketing information explaining the service and how it works is going to be available on this page, but you will notice when not signed in, that is a prerequisite in order to move forward. So both to ask questions or to purchase new credits, you are going to be directed to either sign in or create an account with ICC. That allows all of your interactions with the service to be captured and tracked so that when you return to this site, the progress around any of your open requests are easily served up and visible for you to progress. All right, so as I move that one out of the way, I can come back to this page and you can see this, I am signed in. I actually have an account here where I've already purchased some credits. Quick Consult is a credit or a transactional based service where each credit is the equivalent of one question being submitted to the technical services team led by Mike Giachetti. And the other thing to point out here is the fact that while it's served through the Digital Codes platform and has a lot of cross-linking where the Digital Codes premium subscription benefits do enhance this feature, it is not a part of any Digital Codes premium subscription. So everything I'm showing here is from the perspective of a basic account, meaning I don't have premium or any purchase made outside of being able to use this service directly. So as a signed in user, the first thing I would see is this purchase credits button. And I will point out that as you click this, you have the ability to purchase exactly what you need. There's very transparent fees behind this transactional service, whereas one credit starts at $195, and you can see if you do purchase bundle credits, 5 or 10, there is a discount inherently baked in. But the user has the ability to wait until there's a need, a question at hand. You can come, you can purchase the credit in real time, and it's going to do is load up your account right there with the credit. From there, as you scroll down, any questions you've already submitted are going to be available to you in a listing format. You have some tabs where you can quickly and easily navigate across the 3 available statuses for those questions. All is going to give you everything regardless of what the status is. You have your submitted status, which would be a question that has been posed to the technical services staff and is awaiting a response. In progress indicates that it has been picked up and there's active engagement between the ICC team and the requester. And then the answered will be for those that have been closed out, an answer has been provided and the user has the ability to see all of the information that's been cultivated and provided for them. The right-hand column here outlines what that process is. So it sounds simple, and that's because we did want to keep this straightforward. That you purchase the credits, you submit your question, which we're going to step through here in just a moment. You're going to have the expert review and analysis from those team of experts in the field, and then you're going to be provided that opinion, that advice. And that is ultimately at your discretion then as to how that gets utilized and applied to the situation at hand. I do want to point out that as we work into this service, this is advice. This is a consultation, whereas Mike and the team are experts across the content, but the ultimate accurate interpretation for the situation is often residing with the AHJ, or the authority having jurisdiction. So whether that is at the state or the local level, all of these advice responses would need to be reviewed and confirmed for accuracy to that specific locale. And I guess before we dive into this, Mike, that presents a good first question for you is how does that factor in when these questions are posed, recognizing that the AHJ does ultimately have the final say as to the correct interpretation and application for that locale?
So with regards to these quick consult questions that would come in, they really are, we're not looking at these any differently than we would as if it was a regular question, quote unquote, regular question that was submitted through for an interpretation to us. So what we typically are looking for though, with regards to the quick consult side, since most people are paying obviously to get an answer on this one, uh, we're looking at this as being more of a black and white type of answer. Or we're intending, I should say, for this to be more of a black and white type of answer. There are some people that might not like the idea that if they submit a question through the quick consult and end up getting a response from us that says, well, it's an alternative means of approval, or what you're doing isn't specifically identified in the code, so the jurisdiction has to be approving it alternatively. That's something that most people, I would think, probably would not want to necessarily pay for. So this is one that we're trying to make sure to make that the questions that are being submitted are more of a black and white. Yeah, we have a definitive answer, as opposed to, am I doing an alternative design? Am I doing something that's not specifically covered by the code?
Okay, perfect, thanks.
And hey, Dan, we are getting a couple questions. I guess we'll just go ahead and clarify how this is different than the staff code opinion as membership. So I'll let you guys answer that. But
Sure. So I will say that the staff member benefit has not changed. That still exists today. That is completely decoupled from the quick consult service that we're offering here. The quick consult is a fast turnaround time. So most, if not all of these questions are addressed within 2 business days or less. I say most because no 2 situations are going to be exactly the same. So if it is a very complex request that requires research, the tech services team is in constant contact with the requester, but there are cases where pursuing that accurate response may require additional time. Being correct in that scenario is more important than being fast. The other big differentiator here is as we click through, not only do you have the portal interface here on Digital Codes, where all of the interactions, including your question, your answer from the ICC team, cross-references to the applicable sections on Digital Codes are provided, but you also have a formal branded PDF with the ICC backing that you can utilize to provide, be it to an AHJ building official who has a similar question about the application here, or if you're providing an appendix for a document inspection report or such, you'll have this document at your disposal that you can utilize to back the fact that ICC has provided this response and stands behind it.
and let me just throw in the two, Dan, because the member benefit ability to ask questions is included. So that is, free, so to speak, because you've paid that the annual membership fee. This is an optional one, and people are asking about the difference. Dan is going through that right now, but yes, the speed and the ability to manage your questions through here. They're going to ask about, or they're asking about follow-up questions, Dan, and also circle back to the pricing again, just to reiterate that.
Yeah, sure. So I will go back to the pricing. I'll bring this up on the screen and leave it there for just a second. But yes, the credit-based experience here is what you're paying for from the time the question is submitted through to the time that your answer is provided. Keep in mind that the reason I opened this conversation talking about legal advice is it is similar in that sense that it is a full consultation for your situation and getting a response. So it's not just a question and answer, but it's the time, it's the clarification between the requester and the tech services staff where necessary, and any interactions, be it comments, which we're going to look at here in a second through the interface itself, or phone calls to discuss your options, to clarify the situation, and make sure that you're getting the highest quality response to meet your needs. And I'll pause there for a second, and Mike, anything you want to add to that, as you are the secret sauce behind the scenes?
Yeah, that the one thing that we just like to make sure with regards to the credits that are being done is that when you do submit a question, obviously we are under the same impression that you are, that you would like to get this within 2 business days. One thing that we always emphasize to people that are submitting this, though, is that we do ask that they be available as much as possible, because if there are, as you're trying to get a question into us within 2 days, if we have questions on our end, we need to make sure that we have an applicable phone number or a contact so that we can have our questions answered so that we can provide you with the service as quickly as possible. So the issue with regards to the 2 days, if we're trying to get in contact with you and we can't get a hold of you to provide an answer, I don't want to necessarily say it's on your end, but we can't provide an answer until we know all the applicable information. So one thing that's important with regards to the 2 days is that we make sure that you or someone is available to answer these questions on our end if we have them, so that we can provide you the answer as quickly as possible.
Okay, thanks, Mike. And I did just see a clarifier come up. Yes, 1 credit is the equivalent of 1 form submission or 1 question. So that's the way that would be perceived. The full interaction for 1 question and cultivation of a response. All right. So that being said, let's step through the process of submitting a question. So I've got 9 credits here. We saw what the end state looks like for one that's already been provided. Well, let's go ahead with one of my available credits. Click through. We're going to ask a question, and we're going to be presented here with a form with a number of optional fields. As we step through each, I will clarify that for the optional fields, the more information the requester is able to provide, the more efficiently that Mike and the technical services staff are going to be able to understand and respond to that question within a timely basis. So we have first and foremost here the applicable code titles. The service as it exists today is tailored for the I codes, 2024 cycles and back, as well as ICC standards like the A117.1, as those are the codes that are most broadly understood and applicable for our tech services staff. It's a wholly overused analogy, but I think in this case it's perfectly applicable to be able to say that not only is ICC the codes, but in our case, codes is literally our middle name. So who better to be able to speak to the evolution of these codes and how they exist or why they exist the way they do than the publisher of those codes. So I'm going to pull a question here that is based on the 2024 fire code. So, and you can see I can type any portion of the title and it's going to jump ahead so I can find the applicable title more efficiently. And then same thing here with the sections. I can type in the section if known, or I can leave this blank. But again, any information I'm able to provide just makes the experience that much more expedited. And I am actually pulling this question from an existing Q&A database question. But while I am populating this, Mike, I will circle back over to you and just ask, what are some of the factors that makes a good question versus a problematic question as they get submitted into you and your team?
So with regards to just the very first option that Dan was just showing you with regards to the code title, the applicable code that we can do, you notice that Dan chose the 2024 International Fire Code. We know that there are a lot of states, a lot of jurisdictions that adopt our codes, but then also provide amendments to the code or in their particular location. So we can do interpretations on, say, the California building code or the Michigan building code or whatever state has adopted it. However, if a state has if your question is in regards to a specific amendment by the state or by the local jurisdiction, that is something, just like with our regular interpretation service, really isn't something that we're going to be able to assist with. ICC is not really subject to or privy to why states and why local jurisdictions modify the code the way that they do. So when you're looking to submit a question, particularly through the Quick Consult service, we do want to make sure that you are looking for something that is ICC specific. So if you have an adopted building code state building code, as long as the language is identical to what you'll find in the international codes, that is something we can assist you with. That would be an example of something that is a good question. Another just prime example, we're looking for, again, issues. The intent is to try and get these to be black and white questions, black and white answers. We don't necessarily want to, we're not going to say that we won't offer an opinion on certain things, but it's much more beneficial to you with regards to this service if we can say, this is the specific section in the code, this is the specific location to your answer, so that we can show you what is being done. And I think with regards to this question that Dan is bringing up right here, it brings up a perfect example where the person is trying to determine what exactly is the applicable section or what is the applicable occupancy classification. That is something that is a black and white type of question and answer that we can provide a sufficient answer to you.
And I will also add on to that, Mike, this one is singularly scoped. So whereas form is intended for one question, one specific focus for a response, if the user were to put 3, 4, 5 questions in here, the response would come back and ask the user to break those out as separate questions, just to maximize the chance of getting a resolution in the time period and working within the constraints of the service as designed.
And we're going to try and answer these questions. I don't want to necessarily say that every submission has to be just one question. Okay, if you have a part that has a second part to it or a third part, it is a case-by-case situation. I will say that, where we do have to look at it and decide, okay, you're really, we want to, if it's something that the follow-up questions to it, we may say, okay, this is getting a little above and beyond the one question scope, and then we might ask you to purchase another credit just because of the number of questions. So we don't want to necessarily say that only ask one at a time. You may be able to ask, a follow-up or, to your original, but we're trying to avoid this being a situation where, like Dan was saying, there's 3, 4, 5 questions trying to be asked at one point.
All right.
Yeah.
Great. Thanks, Mike.
Got to create a final document at some point, right?
Exactly.
Exactly.
All right, so we've got our subject, we've got our details. This is your chance to provide as much scope, understanding for your situation for the tech services team to make an informed response around. And then you've got your attachments field. And this supports PDFs, Word documents, images, anything that's going to support the understanding around the situation or scenario that you're inquiring about. So take advantage of this. There is validation, as you can see, 5 megabyte file size, and it is limited to JPEGs, PNGs, and Word documents. But this is a feature that's utilized heavily and does support the tech services ability to understand the situation rapidly. And then as far as the content,
let me just add one other thing with regards to figures that are being included when you're submitting something. If you're submitting a figure to us in order to substantiate your question, that is something that we would like to, that is something that is beneficial in this regard. If you're submitting a figure to us and asking us, hey, can you evaluate this drawing or look at this drawing and tell me what you think, that's not something that is really the intent of the service. We're looking for you to provide us a question as opposed to us evaluating or reviewing drawings or reviewing figures as part of the question and answer service.
all right, great call out. And then with the contact information, so this is meant to clarify the email address that you are actively signed in with, because this is paramount for where the notifications around changes of your submitted question are being sent. So if you're not actively signed into the application, these are what's going to let you know a response has been provided or a comment has been placed. So we want that transparency for the users, especially if they have more than one account or more than one email address that they use on a day-to-day basis. And then this field, while optional, is the most invaluable one for the user to press themselves and be able to provide. And Mike, I'm going to have you speak to this as well, just how often a follow-up phone call is utilized and how valuable that is for the timeliness of getting a response to the requester.
Yeah, definitely something that we want. Most of the time, we're never 100% sure with regards to questions that are being asked, what the issue may be. So it's important that a phone number be provided as far as a contact. Email works as well, but sometimes emails get lost in the shuffle. People might not check them. With regards to a phone number, though, we tend to call so we can get a more immediate answer with regards to any questions that we have. As I mentioned earlier, if we can't get in contact with you with regards to a question, there's not an answer we can necessarily provide. We don't want to guess in regards to your question. You're paying for it. It's your money. So we want to make sure we get your answer appropriate to you, but we don't want to guess as far as where something may or may not be in your question or if something is inaccurate. So that definitely is I would say 90% of the time you're going to get a phone call from us if you submit this. Not necessarily saying that anything is wrong, but just asking to confirm or probably asking for additional details so that we can provide you the full answer, full scope of your answer.
And then the final form field here is the terms of service. Clicking on that, you can see exactly what that entails. And then we've got the transparency so the user understands. The form submission is going to utilize one of your credits, and you'll see exactly how many credits will be remaining once you submit. All right, so on submission here, it's going to cultivate all of that information. It's going to send it to the back-end system, and it's going to remind us, please allow up to 2 business days. Generally, the first response or first contact is much more rapid than that. And as I scroll down, if I go to all, now we can see I have 2 questions that have been submitted under the scope of my account. We already looked at the answered one. This one is currently in the submitted status. And if I click through, I'm able to see all of the information that I had provided, but the actual response and the generated PDF with it is pending until that submission is provided. During this period of time, once this question is submitted, I have the ability to further provide details or information around this question that it gets funneled directly into the tech services team. So let's say in this example, I forgot a very important piece of information around this question. I can actually click here and I can add important details. And upon submit, we can see this gets appended directly with the question. It also gets appended on the back end as Mike and team pick this question up so that that information is taken into consideration immediately.
And just to add something with regards to how quickly is something we see this, as soon as Dan had submitted that question, I already have the email saying that a quick consult question was submitted. So that's how fast it gets submitted to us. I already know that a question is in here. So at this point, what's going to happen is I'm going to open that, look and see at the question, look and see who is the appropriate person on our staff that would be able to handle that question. And then I would be assigning that particular question to one of our staff members. And once I assign it, Dan, correct me if I'm wrong, but once I assign that question, you as the customer will be receiving an email letting you know who the question was assigned to.
Absolutely correct. And I was going to say, just because this one is a test question for the purposes of this webinar, Mike, off screen, I have just assigned this to myself so that it doesn't throw off your team's counts. But as I come in here to my inbox with what Mike was alluding to, I can see that submission has now been moved to in progress. So not only do I get an email indicating that status, I'm going to close this one out so it doesn't throw us off. If I hit refresh here, we can see the status on this one is actually changed from submitted to in progress. So I immediately know that somebody on the ICC side is actively working my question now. And on the back end, not only do they have the ability to reach out via phone because I provided a phone number, but this comment section becomes an active communication between now and the time the response is provided. So on the back end, as the tech services staff responds to that, what I can see is on refresh, any response they put gets immediately appended here so I can track it. All right, so at this point,
so you will get, yeah, I was going to say, you will get an email if you go to that other screen you have open there, Dan. I think it showed as a customer there, you'll see that you got the first one that says the quick consult has been submitted. I think it's the third one on your list there, Dan.
This one right here.
That one. Yep. So that one. So as you as the customer, as soon as you submit your question, that's what you'll get an email that says it's been submitted, and then you'll get the second separate email as Dan was showing, saying that it was in progress. And just like, or if you submit a comment, you'll get an email. So basically, any type of communication back and forth, you will be getting emails letting you know that the status of where things stand at the point at any one particular time.
Yeah, fantastic. And Mike, as I move this off screen into the responded state, can you just speak a little bit to what the process actually is as it follows you and your team from it getting picked up to an answer actually being provided?
So what happens is once, as I said, once the question gets submitted to us, we look and see, obviously all of our staff has different specialties. So we will, as I mentioned, I will be talking to our staff and seeing not only who's the applicable person to send to, but their availability as well. You know, it doesn't do a lot of good if you submit a question to us, let's say that has accessibility to it, and our accessibility person is out on vacation, or our primary accessibility person is on vacation. That is a prime example, actually, of something that where a phone number is going to be beneficial, because what we will do in a situation like that is give you a call and say, you know, we want to assist you with regards to your question. However, our main people that are responsible for this answer are not available at this time. We'll ask you at that point, you know, if you don't mind waiting for an answer, we can obviously push it back, but we don't want to just assign a question to someone that doesn't have the expertise to be able to provide you with the applicable answer. So that's the first main thing, going back to the phone number, as far as making sure that that's provided. But assuming that someone is available in the office to do it, we talk to that person, say, here's the question, and immediately, as long as they're available to do it, we'll say, okay, go ahead. They start jumping into the question, providing an answer. Once they develop an answer, an answer gets reviewed by at least one other set of eyes. Usually it's more than that before we go ahead and send it out to you. So this is not just you submit a question, one person looks at it, it's their opinion, and it gets sent out. This is, as I said, at least two people are looking at the question and answer, sometimes more than that, before we submit the question or submit our response back to you.
All right, fantastic. Thanks, Mike. And so while you were sharing that, I did move this into completed. So I just wanted to show that I did generate another email. So my quick consult user would have been notified each step of the way. And it does clarify that my response and my PDF is now available for me. So whether I go back to the listing page or whether I just refresh this, we can see that the status has in fact been updated. Here is my answer from the ICC team. Additionally, we have an active reference to the applicable title and section that this answer was derived from. And clicking through to that will actually bring me into the code. So I'm further engaged with not only this section, but any accompanying text preceding it or immediately following it. Additionally, I'm going to have my download PDF answer. So here is my formal response here with the ICC branding that I can utilize to provide either for my own records or formally with whatever the situation entails. Okay. And we talked about the comments.
That was a good
question,
point.
Bill?
Yeah, that was a good point, because someone did ask whom they can share that with. It's not necessarily just private for them, but if they are presenting something, you know, at a statewide or a chapter meeting, they can do that as well too, right?
Correct. And that's where the branding and the backing of ICC becomes so valuable, that this is not just somebody making an interpretation, it's the International Code Council.
Absolutely. And then finally, just to keep it clean here, how far back can they ask code interpretations? You guys are familiar that many state cycles are well behind others. How far back can you go for opinion like this?
We can
Mike,
go back as far back. Yeah. We can go back as far as necessary. You know, the difficult part that I will say here is that most of the staff that is answering questions are former, and not that this would ever be a situation, but most of our staff here are former BOCA National Building Code members. We don't have many, if some, we might not have at all, but we don't have people that are necessarily privy to uniform building code or standard Southern building code questions. someone had to go way back in the time machine to figure out those, that is not something we'd be able to assist with. We could help with BOCA, definitely, because we have all those codes available here. We definitely can help with any of the international codes going back to from the first edition of the 2000s, in some cases 95, 97 if you were dealing with plumbing or mechanical, all the way up to any of the standards that ICC produces. One other thing I do want to mention with regards to that is, while ICC produces standards, we can answer questions on standards that ICC produces. Can't answer questions in regards to other recognized standards. Like, for example, the building code references several standards, as all of you are well aware, but I'll just pick one at random and just say NFPA 13 for sprinklers. While ICC references NFPA 13, we don't offer interpretation on that reference standard. So any standard that is ICC specific, or any code that ICC has produced, those we can answer a question on.
And there is support within the workflow that if a question of that nature gets submitted, Mike and team would be able to flag it as declined to answer with an explanation as to why. In that scenario, the user would still have record of the question, but the credit utilized to submit that form would be returned to the user. So in this case, I had 9 credits. This one brought my balance down to 8. If this status had been marked as declined to answer because it was on a standard outside of the scope of what Mike and team are able to speak to, my balance would go back up to 9.
And again, that just goes back to the phone number or something being provided so that we can contact you and say, this is not something we're going to do. We're not just going to automatically say, can't do it. You know, you get an email and says can't do it. We will contact you and tell you why. And if there's something more to your question at that point, maybe we can discuss it over the phone. But we're not just going to blanketly just say no. We're going to let you know ahead of time as to why.
And with this one in particular, so my response has been provided to me. Notice that the comment fields are still active with my ability to add another comment. So if there is a clarifying question or follow-up, I do have a 2-day window in which I can continue the conversation around this point to ensure that I have clarity and confidence in the information that I'm being provided. Again, the name was intended for exactly that, the confidence through a consultation. So if I either don't understand the question or want to ask a clarifying point, I can submit that here. That will continue to be funneled through the system into Mike and team. And if I go on the back end, I can just simulate here. All right, I hit save. It would have generated an email. And as I hit refresh here, we can see that that clarifying point, that conversation does continue to progress to the point that the customer is satisfied and this ticket is formally closed out. Once closed out, if we go back to the list page here, these questions never go away. So the fact that I have asked these, I have access to the answer, and I have access to come in here and download this PDF at any point. This truly is my engagement and my content to utilize to whatever extent makes sense. It's another benefit of why we're delivering this experience through digital codes behind the user account. So long as your account is active, that's how long you'll have access to your questions that were posed and the ability to download and distribute those PDFs as appropriate. All right, so that being said, Mike, I know we stepped through the life cycle. Anything else you want to add around tips or tricks, warnings, cautions, anything to that effect?
The only thing I'm just going to emphasize again is that the 2 days. We try to, as I said, we try to get these out within 2 days as quickly as possible. If there's ever a situation where it's going to go longer than that, as I mentioned, we do contact you to let you know where we stand with it. You know, I will say that, you know, most of the people that have been submitting questions so far, if it's ever an issue where, and I can speak from experience from me calling people, there's few people that were brand new to the use of this service. I think it was Dan was mentioning earlier on how we still offer our regular interpretation service where you don't have to pay for anything. We've had people call up, or people that have submitted questions through here that didn't quite understand this is how it was supposed to be done. They thought that they had to pay now, and it wasn't the case. So question came in, talked to them over the phone, explained everything to them, and they said, "Oh, okay, didn't realize that was the case." We explained it to them, said, maybe a couple of days, maybe a day or so, maybe you get this in 3 days, maybe you get it in 4. Are you okay with that? So far, everybody's been okay. The point is they just want to know that their answer that it's in the process, it's being looked at, and we're getting the answer correct for them. That's the key. As Dan mentioned, it's yes, we're trying to get it to you quicker, but it's more important to be correct than it is just to send out anything that is in a day or a day and a half if it's not right. Doesn't do anybody any good if it's not the right answer. So we just do ask that if it ever is a situation where it's a more complicated issue on our part, that you give us a little bit of leeway. That's all I'm saying.
All right. Well, with that said, Phil, we want to open it up to questions. Do we have any more coming in through the chat?
Yeah, and a couple comments on that. So I guess, and Dan, what Dan has on the screen right now is our premium answers. These are insights that are attached to certain selected sections in the iCodes. And yes, these do come from a library of questions that came from, the member benefit. Not every single one. I mean, we have hundreds there. We'll continue to add more. So those have been kind of anonymized and used as examples. So that's what those come from. Related to that, then someone asked, well, what about the questions I'm asking? And that's one of the other unique things about this. You get to track the whole process through your Digital Codes Premium site. You will always have access to those PDF summaries of them. Those are not public information, so they're not going to come up in a Google search. We're not going to take, that specific, question. I guess you can explain where these questions came from too, but we're not going to take these questions in their entirety so it can be identified to, whom asked that question or anything.
Yeah, these are unique to your engagement. What Phil had alluded to is the Q&A database. So these are the more broadly applicable questions that the team has identified have value to a broad audience. These are going to be a part of your Digital Codes Premium subscription. So whereas I am a basic account in this example today, I can see the questions, but you will notice the answers for these ones of questions that have already been researched and answers cultivated by the tech services team. That is going to require me to have an active premium subscription to view those.
And going back to purchasing credits again, Dan, too. Actually, I'd like to know the answer to this as well, too. So the owner of the subscription to Digital Codes purchases them. I guess go ahead and start from the top on this, but what I'm getting to is if, the licenses are being used in a concurrent group, who has access to using those credits and do they ever expire?
So if we're talking credits specifically for Quick Consult, remember we had said at the top of this webinar, these exist outside of Digital Codes Premium. There is no dependency between a subscription, whether it's concurrent or who's managing it, and the credits utilized here for Quick Consult. These, as a transactional nature, are directly purchased and utilized by the account that is signed in.
The accountant Digital Codes there. Where you sign in, that's where you have access to the credit and everything. So those are yours. And continue explaining that, Dan. I guess because sometimes they get the question, can I share this with my other team members?
Correct. And in that scenario, if there's multiple credits being purchased, please reach out to ICC. There are ways that we can handle that. But through the interface here, it is a direct purchase and utilize experience, meaning the account purchasing it is the account expected to utilize those credits. So if I come to the account menu here, the actual email address I'm signed in with for this webinar today is quickconsult@iccsafe.info. It is that email and password that I would be signing in with and using the credits. And it is also then that account that I would be navigating to the answered tab to download the PDFs from. At this point in time, this information would not be accessible to any other accounts on Digital Codes except for that Quick Consult at iccsafe.info account.
And I'm sorry, the expiration date, is there anything? I don't think.
So the credits are good for 1 calendar year, but that is primarily for the purpose of encouraging the user to use them. If there are extenuating circumstances, reach out to ICC. You know, we are flexible with that, but yeah, the key is we don't want you to buy a credit and forget about it. We want to make sure that you do take advantage of the service and the credit.
All right, excellent. So there's no questions that are coming in. I guess I can monitor the chat if someone has a verbal question that they think needs to be answered. Go ahead and raise your hand and we'll answer that question. We are got about 10-15 minutes left. So please offer any questions that you have now while we have our two experts online here. I can also take questions at the end about other Digital Codes premium features, but I'll pause for a second to see if anyone's posting any questions or if anyone's raising their hand. And we do have a raised hand. Let's see if I can navigate there.
Okay.
Still navigating. We closed. All right, trying to get to Bruce. Did that work, Bruce? Are you unlocked? There we go. Go right ahead. Looks like your mic is available.
I've unmuted.
Yeah, we can hear you. Go right ahead.
We can hear you,
Excellent.
Bruce.
All right, hi guys. Thank you for this webinar. 2018 IRC, IBC, and IEBC are enforced throughout municipalities in my state here in Arizona. It's actually raining here today. Glory be. Does ICC address 2018 codes, and how far back in history is ICC capable of searching?
Mike, you want to take that one?
Yeah, hopefully you can hear me. They decided in the office outside to do a leaf blowing, cleaning out the courtyard behind us.
Of course it did. Murphy's Law.
Sounds like it's right outside.
Yep.
Yeah, we can go back to any of the international codes. That's not a problem as far as answering any questions on that. As I mentioned, if you had questions earlier than that, like the old BOCA code, we can help with that. The one thing that we probably wouldn't be able to assist with is anything with regards to the standard or Southern codes or the old uniform codes. But any of the international codes back to 2000 and 2000, not a problem. We can answer questions on that.
What year in history does the international codes go back to? Do you know offhand?
The first edition of the building code, well, it's different for some of the codes. Like the first edition of the building code was 2000.
Okay.
The first, just because you brought it up, the first edition of the existing building code was actually 2003. The first edition of the mechanical and plumbing codes, I think, were earlier than that. I think plumbing code actually was like 1995. I believe the mechanical code was 1997. Was the first edition, but for the most part, everything started at 2000.
Okay, well answered, and thank you for your answer.
No problem.
All right, I'm going to go to another question here with the raised hand. I might hold on just a second there, but just reiterating the difference and the sameness, I guess, about the standard Q&A questions through the membership. So yes, you're going to get the same level of service. This is a different format that some people prefer, and also for those people who are not ICC members. This opens up the opportunity for them to ask these questions without being a member, having those member benefits. And we got a couple questions more about submitting a standard Q&A. So I don't know if that references to the members benefit, but if you go to your membership page, you'll be able to see ask a code interpretation question. Getting to Ahmed. I think we got you. Unmute. Go ahead. Whoops. Did you get it there? I thought I had muted you. If I didn't and you can't go there, go ahead and raise the hand again. I knew Knew it said you were having some challenges unmuting it there. All right, let's try it one more time. Unmute. All right, looks like you're good to go.
Okay, so basically first, if a question is submitted and you don't have the appropriate expert to answer that question, will you will we have the option to gain that credit back again, or is that credit expended?
In the scenario that it is a question that the tech services team cannot answer, that credit would be returned to the individual. So you would be able to submit a different question with that credit.
All right, thank you.
I think what he's asking is, let's say for like in the example that I brought up, where it's an accessibility question, but our accessibility person is on vacation. I think what he's asking is, would they get the credit back at that point? So the point is, we would be able to provide you an answer. It's just not going to be within the 2 days. You're gonna you would have to, unfortunately, in that case, wait until we got back. At that point, I'm assuming we can offer the same. We would be able to offer the same refund of the credit at that point, Dan.
Those types of situations, yeah, we would certainly take that into consideration, and we would work with the requester offline to make sure that they're satisfied with the service.
All right, thanks, Mike and Dan.
No problem.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Another advantage here too, you get to track that whole conversation or chat history, so to speak. So you gotta, you know exactly where everything's at. You can make those questions or clarifications as you go along. You're able to see it within your program.
I add one thing, Phil. You were mentioning that someone had asked about just the quote regular questions, and there is a spot, I believe, on your membership page to do it. Submit a question just in the regular format. The other way that you can submit the question is if you go to just the generic ICC website page, which is iccsafe.org. Across the top of that homepage, you'll see several headings. One of which I believe is products and services.
Yeah, I'll post that direct. Yeah, go ahead, explain. I'll post the link right now directly to it.
If you look at the top of the heading there, products and services, you go down to the first one, which is codes and standards. And then right there is code interpretations. And if you click that, that will take you to there's the request a code opinion. That is the quote regular method or membership benefit method if you fill out that form. And Dan, as you can see there, Dan was not logged in. That's why he couldn't go any further when he clicked that particular button. As you see there, it said he had to log in. As this is the regular service is a membership benefit. So you do have to be a member of ICC to ask a question in the normal method, not necessarily the quick consult method, but this particular regular method, you do need to be a member of ICC.
All right, we do not have any other further questions in the chat yet. I'll give one last call to anyone that wants to raise their hand. I will stay on a little bit longer here, and I am posting, this is Phil Anthony, posting my email address in here if you have any questions about any of the Digital Codes premium features or how your organizations can use it. I'm posting that in there right now, and just following up for anyone that came in later, there is recording that's happening of this, and it will be sent out to all registrants. So just got to have our marketing people format it, and everyone will get a follow-up email with this recording link.
All right, fantastic. Well, appreciate everybody's time today. Mike, thank you in particular for taking the time out to join us. Phil, thanks for hosting and facilitating all the questions.
Absolutely, Mike and Dan, thank you. I'll stay on for the last 5-10 minutes here if anyone has any questions about Digital Codes Premium. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
We'll stop the recording here.
Okay.